All right. And after that comes everybody that makes the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation possible. To all of our generous members, individual members, corporate members, special partner institutions, and senior special partner institutions, without whom we would not be here today. The Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation is a nonprofit member-supported organization in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines. And it is only through your generosity and support that we are able to bring you our sessions every 2 weeks for poverty alleviation through job creation in the Philippine countryside. If you are joining us this morning, welcome. Good morning. Again, I hope everybody is okay in the aftermath of Typhoon Christine. Unfortunately, it has been really an unprecedented amount of rainfall, especially in the Bicol region. The news reports say that this was about 2 months worth of rain dumped in a single region in one day. Uh, and that truly is a huge amount of water, and we hope that this is we hope every year that this would be another wake-up call, especially to our local administrations on the importance of addressing the effects of the climate crisis, and of course for the infrastructure to be built to prevent future disasters from happening. So if you are joining us, we hope that you are all safe, and that you were not heavily affected by the typhoon. And yeah, we keep everybody who has been heavily affected by the typhoon in our thoughts. And we hope that you will be able to recover soon. Okay, but if you are joining us through our social media uploads 2 weeks later, welcome from wherever in the world you are. We hope that today's session will bring you a lot of value. If you are a person who works in the coffee industry, is interested in the coffee industry, maybe you don't know much about what coffee is like, maybe you didn't even know that the Philippines is slowly becoming a powerhouse in the global coffee industry. We hope today will shed some light on that matter. Leave us a comment below. We hope that you can share your experience as well, or if you have any questions that you'd like to leave for our speaker, please do leave that in the comments below or send us an email. We'd be very, very happy to hear from you and welcome you to the organization. Okay, so with that, I'd like to invite our chair, Mr. Ernie Ordonez, to introduce our speaker for this morning. Ernie, please come in.
Thank you, Julius. It's my great pleasure to introduce Michael Harris Conlin. Let me say, I want to compliment again our president. Ever since he took over, we grew from a small group of 35 people meeting physically every week to today 1,489 globally. And it is because of this widespread reach that our president and his team has brought that we give you this today. And as we know, our objective, as our departed chair said, is not just to transfer technology, but through this technology to decrease our poverty. So let me start by saying, Michael, we'd like you to do three things. First of all, when we start, we'd like you to give your contact number so people around the world can call you without having through the bureaucracy of going through us to get your insights. Secondly, give us 5 to 10 minutes of your background. We want to develop a personal relationship with you because when you know your background, we get to understand what motivates you more. And by doing that, we get motivated ourselves. And thirdly, as you speak, as we said, keep in mind your advice or suggestions on how we can broaden your advocacy to expand the light you shine to the rest of our people, especially our marginalized. Now, we're a business group, and I like to say I looked at your background. I'm very impressed. I'll say 5 things for people to know. The first one is a globally excellent person in the whole world competition. No Filipino has ever won. He won in the top 15 of the World Barista Championship. So I said, what is a barista? A barista, as I look through Google, is a person who prepares and serves coffee. But let's see what prepare means. Prepare can mean making and creating. That is what Michael Conlin does. He actually creates, mix. He just doesn't serve waiter coffee. He actually makes and prepares it. And given this outstanding achievement of being only Filipino at top 15 in the world championship, he goes beyond that and goes into new technologies. That's the purpose of our seminar, right? New technologies to bring us to the world stage, as our president Julius said. He does cutting edge post harvest technology. So first, he's outstanding the world. Second, he does new technologies. Thirdly, he goes to different parts of the country. He wins awards using coffee from Laguna, Liberica, and Arabica from Benguet and other places. But the fourth and fifth are the most important. The fourth and fifth shows he has a heart for our people. He wants to help our people. He doesn't just want to just excel in his achievements. He wants to share it. He put up a social enterprise called TGC in 2017. It's called by different names. He has a giving cafe, a giving cart, and a giving caravan. And the idea is to empower our local coffee farmers. And the fifth one is he's not just doing that with his own social enterprises. He actually established a foundation. He calls it the Foundation for Sustainable Coffee Excellence. We're reviewing the coffee roadmaps right now. They're in need of great help. And hopefully, Michael, beyond this, will request you to look at this. I've been asked by the Secretary of Agriculture to add this effort, the upgrading of roadmaps, so that, as Julius said, we're going to the global stage. We got to do it right. And we need you to advise us on these roadmaps, because they were generally done before by academic people without the top people contributing. Now we want a top person like you to be involved. So without much further ado, Michael, I guess I'll start with my question, your contact number, and then I can ask you to proceed your presentation. So Michael, could you give us your contact number, your office number, or your personal number, whatever number it is, because people around the world can call you. Could you give us, Michael, your contact number? I know you can do it on the chat page, but please give it verbally, because some people don't look at the chat page because they're around globally. So can you give us, dictate verbally, what could be an office or a personal contact number for you?
So first of all, thank you for the beautiful introduction, and your kind words mean so much to me. Thank you for having me here today. My contact number is 0917 555 9888. But the best way to reach me is on my my personal email, which is michael@michaelharris.ph. Over there, you can also find, or people can find, more information about what I do and the things that matter to me, because I do write some blog articles there. Another way of reaching me would be on my Instagram. I'm very active there. It's Michael Harris PH. It's really easy, and I try to keep all my my contact details the same and sounding familiar.
Thank you, thank you. For those of you who haven't gotten your pens out, here we go. Michael, correct if I'm wrong. Number. First of all, thank you. People give their office numbers. It's a landline. You're so kind. You're giving us your cell number. 0917. You got it, folks? 0917 555 9888. And you can get a lot by going through his email. It's Mike@michaelharris.ph. Am I correct, Michael?
Yes, that is
and
correct.
Instagram, right? Michaelharris.ph. Okay. Now, having said that, we look forward to this. And Michael, frankly, we're far from, we import 70% of our coffee. We're far from Vietnam, import their coffee. And we need this roadmap, and the roadmaps have got to be improved. As I said, I was assigned to do the roadmaps, private sector led. So we hope, in addition to this, you get involved in the creation of the new roadmaps which are about to start. We're glad we caught you early enough. So on that note, Michael, thank you for coming, and hopefully your light will shine much broader, not only through this group, which can broaden that light, but through the roadmap, which will set the stage of how we can regain our prominence. Right now, we're way behind, way behind. And this really can help so many people, especially what they call intercropping, where 2 million out of 3 million coconut hectares are totally idle, ridiculous, right? So coffee can penetrate there. So Michael, please go ahead, and we're so happy to have you. The floor is now yours.
Thank you. So I like following instructions. So I think part 2 was to introduce myself. So my name is Michael Harris, Conlin. I've been in coffee for 24 years now, and coffee is difficult, and I have to say that outright. There's a lot of people entering the coffee industry these days, and they don't realize how difficult it is. 20 years in coffee, I can tell you one thing: you're not gonna turn into a billionaire, being in the coffee industry. The success of Starbucks and all these huge, gigantic companies is not easy, and it's a very, very difficult road. I am in coffee because I love coffee. I started when I was young. I was only 20 years old at the time, and I think I entered the coffee industry at the time when it wasn't fashionable yet. So I think I'm lucky that I'm doing what I love. I'm doing something that means a lot to me. And in the beginning, when I started in the coffee industry, we were one of the most aggressive players in the coffee industry. We were in it to win it. But in 2016, I was asked to do a talk just like this one, but live, in Benguet State University. And I was asked to talk to a number of coffee farmers. During that time, I always believed that Philippines had a lot of coffee. I always believed that Philippines had enough coffee to supply, because we were buying coffee from Benguet. We were buying coffee from Mindanao. And what I discovered after that talking to these farmers, was there wasn't much coffee. The reality was, some of these farmers came up to us and asked if we can buy their harvest. And what we found was, they are micro farmers. They are backyard farmers. They each have like 5 kilos maybe. And being able to sell or grow 5 kilos of coffee, there's no way they can make ends meet. And at the time, the price of coffee was really, really low. They were selling this at 150 pesos per kilo, and it's impossible for them to cover their costs. So that's when things changed. There was a switch in me that changed, and I realized that if we don't do something at that time, if we don't do something soon, one day, Philippines wouldn't have coffee anymore. One day, the sons and daughters of these coffee farmers would just decide that coffee is too difficult, and it's an expensive hobby. It's not something that is sustainable, and they would just give up. They would just go be professionals or go do something else. So that's when we put up our foundation in the same time. It's called Foundation for Sustainable Coffee Excellence. And we had one main goal in mind: to convince these farmers to keep planting trees, keep planting more. And then we focused on how we can add more value to these coffees. And what we found was to start fixing the process, fixing the way these coffees were picked. These coffees were processed, dried, And from there we grew. We adopted a few communities. We started with La Trinidad and realized that it wasn't suited for them because they have other crops that make more money. And then we ended up in Itogon. We discovered Itogon, Sitio Hartwell, Itogon, because of a landslide. There was a typhoon there, and my team and I were there giving out aid. We were giving water. We were delivering water, and we met the local LGU who said he was gonna ban pocket mining, which it's very very unsafe, and we agreed that they should ban small scale mining. And that left the citizens or the people of that town jobless. And we discovered that they had really, really old coffee trees that can be multiplied, can be worked on. So that's when our journey started in Itogon. We decided that we need to enable these coffee farmers to produce good coffee, and we provided drying houses because Philippines is a humid country, and coffees need to get dried. It cannot. There's difficulties drying it, so we started with these, and we brought in experts to teach us how to do the processing properly, and in order to bring more value to that coffee, what I did at the time, I was still an entrepreneur. I wasn't much of a barista. I realized that there should be a bridge. A barista is not just a person who serves coffee, but to me, a barista is an ambassador for coffee. They are the people who communicate the beauty of the coffee and explain it and present it and bring the best out of it for the consumer. And the barista is it's a difficult job. And I decided to learn to be a barista. And I felt that if I competed with Filipino coffee, bring it to the world stage, then there would be attention. And yeah, I was lucky enough that I worked hard enough, lucky enough that I had the support to get me there to the world. And yeah, and there's so much more other learnings, but that's the history, my history, the short version of my history in coffee and how I got into it.
All right. Thank you so much. Actually, yeah, I forgot to mention this to you earlier today, Ernie. Today's session will be more a moderated conversation. So if you remember what we did with, we had a few sessions back in 2023 where it was more a conversation between us and the speaker rather than a full-on presentation. I think in terms of coffee, people have a basic understanding of what coffee is like in the Philippines. And when Michael was talking with us yesterday, we felt that it would be a better sort of use of his 24 years of experience to really, more zoom in on his particular experiences. So I hope everybody doesn't mind. What we'll do is I'll start by asking a few questions, and then we can have a bit of a conversation with Michael, and then after that I can ask some people to ask a few questions, and then we continue with our conversation from there. So yeah, actually, I think maybe we can start with that one. This whole idea of back in 2002, I don't think coffee, much less Philippine coffee, much less this whole idea of single cup brewing, artisan coffee or anything. I think back in 2002, coffee was still 3-in-1, was still sachets of instant packets, or big bubbling coffee machines with big pitchers of coffee that you don't know how long they've been there. Can you maybe just walk us through your experience, especially considering that you were at the forefront of all of this, Michael? What was it like, before this whole thing, coffee production in the Philippines, the history of that, and then when you came in, what you've seen since then? Because we have statistics to say that the Philippines was once the fourth largest coffee producer globally, and then now, we're we're so far behind countries like Vietnam and Indonesia. Maybe you can anchor us in a bit of a timeline of how this coffee was so cheap and not really something that was worth considering unless you were, I don't know, Nestle or San Miguel trying to create instant coffee. And then now we've gone to this level of you've got little boutique cafes springing up all over the place. Maybe you can sort of guide us through that history.
Yeah, Julius, just before we start, just the
Mm.
ground rules. I think it's excellent. I think this is more effective than the presentation. And after you give you a few pointed questions, which I'm sure will bring out the best that we have to know, just to alert the rest of the people. After he gives this pointed question, since many people are hungry for this, and though we have a 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock informal session that's not recorded, after you ask his key questions, the others are limited to one question or the most two to allow other people to ask questions. And then after this formal session, we have the 9 to 10, but I like to be kind of strict because time is limited and people are hungry to interact. So we like to say that after Jules gives us a few key questions, the rest coming in will be limited to one question, if possible, one, the most two. That's all just ground rules so that people don't get carried away because many people want to get carried away. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem. We edited that out. Yeah, go ahead, Michael. Yeah.
All right. So, no, that's a really, really good question about the history of coffee and what I saw in the past 24 years. Actually, when I came in the coffee industry, the Starbucks was still fairly new. I remember a branch in Rockwell or Power Plant. We used to go there. It shows how old I am, actually. Yeah, we used to hang out there, and then there's another one in Makati, and it was always jam packed. It was always jam packed. But at the time, we have no idea what coffee quality was. At the time, all we knew was coffee is dark. You put sugar and milk or creamer, right? And the standard was you put on your black coffee, you put 2 packs of sugar and 2 packs of creamer, and that's the perfect timpla. So that's how I remember coffee. But I liked it black. I liked it black all the time, and it's because to me, I started drinking coffee in college. I needed it to keep me awake. I needed it to keep me alert, and that blackness, that bitterness, is like a kick. It's like a wake up call. And I believe that's the same thing for many people here in the Philippines. It's that kick, it's that sipa. And yeah, back then there was also a coffee roadmap that I remember. And I think the people who wrote it are brilliant, actually. The roadmap was a good roadmap. But in this day and age, we need to update it. So I think that's something that we can dive into a little bit later. There are a few things that I've seen in the past 24 years that doesn't work, and I can see why it did not it wasn't much of a success. In terms of a coffee growing country, again, I keep hearing, and according to my research, it is true. We used to be one of the top exporters of coffee in the world, but that was in the 1800s. And I think the 1800s is not something that, saying it over and over again, for me, my personal feeling, saying it over and over again only makes me feel bad because that was the 1800s. What was happening in the 1800s that's so, if you keep saying we were the top in the 1800s, is that meaningful? If it was the 1900s, maybe, right? But the 1800s, weren't we still in Spanish rule at the time? So it's like it's something that we're proud of, but I don't think it's something that we should keep. It's like living in the past. Di ba? Ang tagal na nun eh. So I think we have to accept reality and just say that we are lucky enough that we're able to grow coffee. We're in the growing region of coffee. We have the right climate. We have the right terroir to grow coffee without making much adjustments. Because in this day and age, there are countries that are not on the coffee growing region and are able to grow coffee. The United States, for example, they now have coffee, right? There is a certain place in Japan where they're trying to grow coffee, and there is the tip of Australia is already growing coffee. So I still feel that we are lucky that we're able to grow coffee and we're a coffee consuming country. What we can be proud of is Philippines is one of the top coffee consuming countries in the world. We love coffee. Unfortunately, almost 90, I don't know the data anymore, but 90+% is imported. So imagine if we are kahit 20%, kahit 30%, I would be happy if we can supply that much. And that's one of our goals. That's one of the things we need to work on. And at the current rate, I think if we have proper government support, if this private sector, the government, and everyone works together, it will be possible. But we have to increase our yield. We have to increase our efficiencies. And of course, we have to make sure that the coffee trees go to the right places. I think in the past that has been a problem in the yeah, it has been a problem. So what else was in the question? Yeah, so throughout the coffee so there's the Starbucks. That's the first wave or second wave of coffee. That's the Starbucks. That's the chain stores, and then came along was what they call the third wave coffee. This is the specialty coffee time. This was happening mid 2010, somewhere there, and then it came to the Philippines about 2012, 2013. That's when it started. This is when people are started to look for coffees that have fruity notes. But our community, Filipinos, said it's maasim at the time. We still couldn't accept it. It was maasim. And the reason why it was maasim was because the roasting style was wrong. Like, I think to enjoy coffee, it has to be balanced. And if something is too sour, and not supported by sweetness, it's just off balance. So yeah, it took some time for the specialty coffee movement to happen here. And now, like you said, it's everywhere. Everyone is opening coffee shops. It is fashionable. You know, there's a TikToker that starts their TikTok by saying, "Hi, I'm a 25-year-old coffee shop owner," and then does her thing. So I think now's the time. Like if we're going to do something, if we're going to do something positive for the coffee industry, now's the time, because there is a lot of attention. There are I'm getting a lot of youth from very good schools, from UP, Ateneo, LaSalle, that are wanting to be baristas, right? These are very educated, from well-off families, applying to be a barista. And when I ask why, and this is the interesting thing, right? When I ask why, and I always tell them they're not going to become billionaires, they say it's because they love coffee and they believe that we are lucky enough to have coffee here in the Philippines. So I think the next generation, somehow, I hope we contributed as well. The new generation wants to enter coffee not because of monetary dreams, but because love for country. They believe that if they don't do something now, we won't have any coffee in the future. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Or if
No problem. We can dive into the details as we get into other questions moving on. Which actually, what you mentioned earlier segues nicely into my next question, because you were talking about we're lucky enough as a country to be in the coffee belt, you know, that region where coffee grows really well. You mentioned that we have the we actually have, good growing conditions. We have a good terroir. So, maybe you can tell us a bit more about what you brought up already. Your work in Itogon, and then actually, how this, from Itogon, I think you also moved to, you also have an area in Santa Maria. And then from there, like you got all of these like artisan coffees, and then you moved them into, how that linked up with TGC, the Giving Cafe, the Giving Caravan, all of these things. What was that like? Benguet coffee has a special place in my heart. But this is where you started. You mentioned this earlier when you were talking about how you got into coffee. So maybe you can give us a bit more of that story as well.
So when we call it adopting communities, because we as much as I want a farm, it's not something the company or myself can afford, right? And a lot the land should belong to the locals, the people who live there, the people who has had it for generations and generations. So what we do is we come in and we guide the community on the proper techniques, the proper ways of taking care of their coffee trees. Most important things are soil, climate, the varietal of coffee they plant, and the process. That's the last. Process is the last, but that's what you can have really, really good process. Soil flavor out of that coffee. So it starts with the soil. And that's what we do. We bringing out the best out of it. There's our soil, climate, varietal of coffee, and process. And when we started in Itogon, we were going to just do it the regular way, which is just buy the green beans, which is the dried beans. And what we realize is if we do not start from the very beginning of the process, there's no saving those green beans. Like once those coffee beans are in its finished form, there's no saving it. No matter how you rework it, or how good you are at roasting, or how good of a barista you are, if the beginning of the process is done wrong, it's wrong all the way. So for the communities we adopt, we buy the cherries wet. We buy it right off the tree. And we pay about 130 to 150 pesos per kilo for these. And this is the highest buying price for coffee cherries all over the world. It's even more expensive than how much coffee cherries are bought in Yemen, which is not a safe country and it's a war zone, right? So when we started doing this, it was actually a risk, but it was a risk I was willing to take because I wanted to experience firsthand how to process these coffees the right way and what's the true potential of this coffee. So we asked the farmers to pick it right. We pay them a daily wage to take care of their own coffee. And we give them work instructions on how to process it. We provide them with all the equipments needed in their farm. So it's almost like we built a post-harvest facility in their property, in their lot that they can use. And yeah, and the result is really good. A lot of the coffees that we produce this way wins awards. They are exported at very nice margins. But as a coffee roaster, my customers are chain stores. Unfortunately, these chain stores would not be able to afford these coffees because the costs of my green beans, rather than being the standard or world price of, like, let's say 500 pesos, our cost is 1,300 pesos per kilo green, which is like which is like a price that doesn't really meet the profile yet. Like, I mean, it's still more expensive than how much the world would pay for it. So we have a long way to go to bring the quality up, or through efficiencies and through yield, like having more trees, bring down the costs. Because at the current price, at the current cost, only the richest of the rich coffee roasters in the world or coffee shops can afford it. So, for example, for export, we have coffees going to Montreal, going to Australia, but they don't buy tons and tons of this stuff because for them, they can't even sell it. They can't even sell much of it because of the price. Imagine the world coffee prices is only at 500 pesos. We're more than double, right? The way we're currently doing it. So, so the key there is to, for us at least, my company was to put up the Giving Cafe, which is a social enterprise. And our goal as the Giving Cafe is to sell these coffees from seed to cup, right? That way we have more margin to share. So basically what we've done is we have bridged the gap. We do not go through traders. We do not go through all the middlemen. And what we're doing is we basically, by having this cafe, we are able to afford the expensive cost of the coffee because there's no one else in the middle making the money, right? And it's direct to consumers. We're able to communicate what the farm is all about, what the people. There's a direct connection between the community and the people who come to the cafe, and they're now buying it per cup rather than bags or in green beans. So that business model has worked. We're lucky enough that we opened the Giving Cafe in 2017, and I'm happy to share with everyone that when we started in Itogon, their harvest was 50 kilos. It's now up to 5 tons, and we're able to buy that 5 tons every year, all of it. And the Giving Cafe is able to at least sell a good majority of that from the coffee shop. So the Giving Cafe, we are opening a second branch because you cannot stop the town from producing more. They're making money now, right? Like cherries, before we came in, if someone's to buy a cherry, it's per bucket. And that's 40 to 50 pesos per bucket. We're buying it at 130 to 150 pesos per kilo. So it's not even a bucket. We're weighing the stuff. And yeah, so that's how current production, and I think the future should work, right? There are some activities that I don't agree with. There's some farms that are given roasters. And farmers, like if a farmer is struggling with taking care of their trees and are given roasters and asked to process the stuff themselves and sell it direct to market, that's an idea, but it's, if you cannot walk, you cannot run, right? If you can't crawl, you can't walk or stand. Like it's such a it's skipping steps. So but that's another solution that people, or at least I think the old roadmap was trying to do, which I don't agree with. So yeah. Yep.
All right. Yeah, because it's really quite something, because if we try to draw that timeline that you were talking about, 2002 you started, and then the Giving Cafe was in 2017, so that 15 years after you started working with these communities. So really there were so many things that could happen in 15 years, I think, before you got to the point where we're now producing this coffee at scale, and enough that we need to figure out a business model that will work for the amount of coffee that we're producing here. So maybe you could talk to us about this 15 years before you got to the Giving Cafe. Like, you know, we always like to hear about the challenges, but maybe you can also talk to us about, what were you pleasantly surprised about, throughout this journey of yours in trying to create this kind of premium coffee that you now sell, and now that you're now opening up a second branch for the Giving Cafe. Walk us through these challenges that you've been facing, and what were you maybe pleasantly surprised about as you got to this point now where you've opened your first branch, you're opening your second branch, you're trying to close that gap between the farmer and the connoisseur, shall we say, who's willing to go for coffee that's you said it was 1,300 for green beans, so I can't even imagine how much that costs once it's roasted properly. Maybe you can talk us through that, because I'm sure there are a lot of people, like you said, you've got two communities right now. There's no way you can adopt every community in the Philippines. Maybe there are other people who will be looking at adopting other communities throughout the country. Maybe you can walk us through that experience.
Yeah, so just a little correction. I started working with the communities in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the Giving Cafe was opened in 2017. So we realized the problem really early.
Okay. Okay.
With the price. We knew by buying the coffees at such a high price that chain stores like the big multinationals would not be able to afford those coffees. We had to make a solution, and the solution was to open our social enterprises, to open this concept that can be adopted and replicated easily. That's why there's so many formats. There is the Giving Cafe, there's the Giving Cart, and the Giving Caravan. So what we want, or our hope, is for more people to take this concept and bring it to places. At least we have the numbers. We know what would work. We know what spaces to open these places at. We have made failures. We did open in UP Los Baños. That did not last long because the community there cannot they don't have the buying power. They don't have the disposable income to enjoy these coffees, and we become unsustainable if that's the case. So what I'm basically saying is the selling price of our coffees, when we're selling coffees, or even as buyers, when we're buying coffees, we have to respect the coffee. We have to remember the hard work, the labor, the innovation that goes into it, right? And then the flavors that come out of it, and of course the craftsmen and women behind it. So it's a lot of work. And when you go out there and you buy a coffee for, let's say, 30 pesos, like let's say you're a 30 peso coffee drinker, you're not helping anyone. You're helping that company, that commercial establishment in popularity, because even they are not making money. So either they're trying to get their stock prices up to flip the company, I don't know. But at that price point, it's impossible. I think the proper price for coffee would be at least 150 and above in a coffee shop. If you're paying 150 and above in a coffee shop for a cup of coffee, then maybe, if all things are good, if they're paying the right prices down the chain, then you're helping. But anything under that, I question that coffee. I feel that coffee has to be respected. It is hard work. It's because if we compare it to wine, there are wine bottles for 20,000-30,000 pesos per bottle, and it's 4 cups and it's done. A kilo of coffee could be as low as ano ba murang coffee? 500, 600 pesos, right? That can produce 100 cups of coffee. So why are we paying so much more for wine, which is less work, than coffee? Coffee has so much work and so much hours. From harvest, from planting the tree. Let's change that. From planting the tree, when coffees are planted, right, it takes about 3 to 4 years for it to bear fruit. So during that time, farmers are not making any income, zero, right? And that tree is not productive at all. When harvest starts, if you're lucky, that tree will start producing on the third or fourth year. And it can produce about maybe 250 grams or 200 grams. It's not even a kilo, right? So in order to produce a kilo of coffee, you need many, many trees. And when we talk about 200 grams, we're not talking about green coffee. We're talking about raw cherry. And from that raw cherry, that fresh cherry, the yield is about 10 to 15%. You can get a little bit higher if you're lucky. So there's so much work. And from harvest season, when you pick those trees and you process it, ferment it, dry it, that's another 3 to 4 months. And then you have to rest it for about 90 days. So it's not like wine. I think wine is valued because of history, right? Like we are used to paying that much for wine. But coffee, I think humans have been trained to not pay much to take it for granted because it is the world's most traded commodity. But we forget that it's expensive. It has value. It has work. There's a lot of labor that goes into it. There's a lot of thought, a lot of care and precision to make it taste beautiful. We have to be precise, and that's where I think we have to focus on what should go into the soil, right? Or what varietal of coffee should go into what location, or how we can control the climate. This is possible now these days, like with technology and greenhouses. We can control climate. This is how places like the United States can grow coffee. They grow it all in a greenhouse where they control the nutrients that goes into the soil to the dot, precision, right? They control the amount of water, the amount of humidity, the amount of sunlight. They control all these things. So again, we are lucky that we don't need to go that far to get great coffee. It's just we need to respect the value, right? We have to communicate to customers the value. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question.
Okay. Well, I think what we're getting from here is like there's really that overflowing passion for creating this kind of coffee. Let's try to zoom into that. Really, we've established your passion for coffee, for the process of growing premium coffee beans and things like that. In our case, as the foundation, we want to look at these models that have been done. You said it only took you a year to get to that point of we've got to close that gap between the farmer and the coffee drinker. Um, maybe we can try to focus on those two communities of Itogon and Santa Maria. This production of premium coffee as a viable way to support our coffee farmers, because we want to try and see if this is something that other people in other communities can replicate. I already mentioned earlier, there's no way you as an individual or as an individual organization can adopt every community in the Philippines. I'm sure there are more communities all over the country that have 5 kilos of coffee that they're trying to dispose of or things like that. So maybe we can start to focus on that. Like, maybe you can share us specifics of that story. Maybe we can talk about Itogon first. Maybe you can walk us through that particular story of starting out, of what you've done. We already mentioned that you have introduced technologies to them on improving their yield. How did you get from the 50 kilos to 5 tons? Maybe we can focus on that a little bit more. Share us the story of Itogon. and that model of adopting that community and then setting up the Giving Cafe, is that something that you'd be okay with sharing? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta start with that. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. It starts with getting the trust of the community, because here we are from Manila.
Mm-hmm.
If we go to any community, any farming community, they look at us and especially ako, I'm kind of Chinese looking.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you have to earn their trust. You
Mm-hmm.
have to stay with them. You have to talk with them. You have to spend time with them, which is what we did. We spent a lot of time with them. We got to know them. We got to know who the leaders are in the community. What are their dreams? What do they want? We got to know their children. What do they want to study? Why? A lot of them, when we went there, a lot of them wanted to be policemen because of a show called Provinciano.
Ah.
And and I was worried. I wanted them to be I wanted them to go into agriculture. I wanted them to continue what their parents do. I want them to still be farmers. And the only way to do that is to convince them that they can make a proper living, right? And it's easy to say, but the most important is to show them that their mom and their dad are providing for them through coffee. The difficulty is coffee here in the Philippines, the harvest is just once a year. So you can't solely rely on coffee. You have to rely on other things. There should be other crops that are planted. Um, those crops have to be selected well, because the soil, like we have to think about the soil. The soil, hindi pwedeng agawan eh. Kasi kung nag-agawan sila sa nutrients, if the two crops do not match, it will take each other's nutrient. Coffee is a very extractive uh, plant. It will take a lot from the soil. In fact, for every kilo you harvest, you have to, and if you put in organic fertilizer, you have to put in times 10 of the volume. So let's say your harvest is 1 ton. You have to put 10 tons of organic material back into that soil, right? If you use chemical, you use a little bit less, but still, that's a lot. And fertilizer is not cheap, and you have to choose the right kind. So you have to understand soil science, right? Um, so it's about community, and it that's the same thing. That's the same thing with the Giving Cafe. The first thing we did when we opened our first branch was work on the community. We went from building to building, went from office to office, explaining what we do, who we are, and we started off with a giving caravan. And the giving caravan is basically introducing the coffee. We had a combi car. It was a 1970 classic combi that we brought around the area, and we gave away coffee. We wanted people to try, and we told them about that coffee. And that's how we drew people in. Um, so those are the two things: building a community, building trust. And when they trust you, they will come. Um, and being transparent. So we were lucky that we were able to do that. It takes time, and it takes being direct and being honest. Um, Again, it's not easy, and I think we've been lucky because the Giving Cafe, throughout the pandemic, when all the other um, restaurants and cafes were failing, we were being supported by our community. We were their pantry. We had people who were sick that would call us and say, "Can you make me a menu? This is the type of diet we do." So we became tagaluto. We were the we were the cook of the community here. So we don't just focus on coffee, because again, if you put all your eggs in coffee, it's going to be difficult. So the Giving Cafe, we serve comfort food. 70 to 75% of our sales is food. Without food, and if we just rely on coffee, we wouldn't be here today. So it's the same thing in the farms. If the coffee farmers put all their eggs on coffee, they won't survive. Not with the current volume. And again, not every company can buy their coffees at the price that we do. So yeah, it's about building community. That's the most basic thing. Wherever you go, um, that's I think step one, build trust.
Okay. All right. Um, we actually have with us, although with their permission, um, Noemi Dado from Agnep Heritage Coffee Farm, who I think is a good partner of Michael's. I don't know if Noemi, you'd feel comfortable sharing about your experience working with Michael. You know, this talk about building trust in a community. It's really I think that that is the foundation that underscores I think any of the efforts that we can do to alleviate poverty in the country, especially when we talk about you know, farmers and farming communities, because uh you know, Michael was saying that he looks a little Chinese, and then he goes to the community and he's trying to establish trust, you know. I think that's a shared experience we have. Although in my case it's with vegetable farmers, and not with coffee farmers. So I don't know if Noemi, you'd feel comfortable. Maybe what we could talk about, like, are there specific gaps, like let's say for example a specific gap that Michael was able to address, or your partnership was able to address, that is a gap that you can see in many other coffee farming communities that are in need of this kind of collaboration. Maybe we can try to focus on that a little bit, if that's okay with you, Noemi. Yeah.
Yeah, I would gladly share my experience because as a coffee producer that's had no idea about coffee, I'm a food tech. And in 2018, I found Michael through, you know how it is. There's a coffee plant, but nobody really helps. It's really, you really have to find your way. So I asked people, I asked the Philippine Coffee Board, and then that led me to Benguet State University, and Benguet State University led me to Michael Harris. And I was so impressed that there is such a coffee stakeholder who can help me because I knew nothing about coffee. I'm married to a kankanay, half kankanay maybe. And it's difficult to be, I'm Visayan, to penetrate also the coffee farm because they call it the Yuhan ka eh. So I had to build their trust, and then I got ideas on how to build. I took lessons and trained them. And unfortunately, on the first year of our harvest, which was 2020, it was COVID, and my husband got COVID. So we weren't around to nurture our first harvest. And all I knew was natural dehydration, natural drying. That all went to waste. And so I said, I'm not going to waste the second harvest. So I talked to Harris, maybe you can be our consultant. And then, and you know, that was the best investment I ever did. And I hope the Philippine coffee industry will also get Michael to really help with the post-harvest processing, because of that we were able to get the best process for our cultivars. We have the Granica, we have the Typica, we have the Red Bourbon, and a blend. And the taste was, well, I know I'm biased, but some of our customers say it was amazing. And it continues to be amazing because we standardize our process. So, you know, without knowing who are the stakeholders, you are left on your own, really. Much as the DTI also helps me, it's a long process. Until now, I still don't have my FDA, so I can't even sell. I sell through friends. So, you know, I'm stuck with an inventory of green beans. And but through Michael Harris and a big coffee shop, Angkan, and TGC. They bought some of my coffee beans. Without that, I'll be broke. And it's true, you'll never get to be a billionaire. With the investment we had made, I don't think we will ever recover. But we are helping our community. We're helping a community of coffee farmers in Benguet. And in over 100 years ago, the great grandfather of my husband started a coffee plantation, and I want to renew that. So there are other farmers there who still have coffee trees but are not nurtured. And with the proper technology that I have learned through coffee stakeholders like Michael Harris, we can revive them. We can tell them to plant more. And that is my vision. And that was the vision from the start.
Okay. I think maybe before I start opening the floor to questions, let's talk about that gap, that post-harvest, buying by the cherry. Oh, by the way, yes. For anyone who might think, oh, buying the cherries at 150 doesn't sound like a lot. We sell chili peppers for that price. Maybe I'd like to point out that um that you still have to process the cherries. You have to get rid of all of the stuff because it's the seed inside that turns into your coffee. So the rest of it, the flesh, the pulp, the skin, everything else has to be removed. So you're actually left with a very, very, very small part of the coffee after it's being sold. So just in case anybody's like, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. No, it's actually a lot of money because you're getting a really small part of the coffee after that. So maybe we can talk about that, like that gap of post-harvest, because you mentioned that you've introduced this kind, and Noemi also mentioned that you've introduced this kind of post-harvest technologies. Can you maybe talk about that gap a little bit more? Why that's such a huge problem for the communities, and why it's a problem that needs to be addressed if this kind of premium coffee production is something that we want to really build on in here in the Philippines.
I'll talk
First of
about
all, thank you
Okay.
first of all, thank you, Noemi, for sharing. Just so you guys all know, Noemi's coffee is actually award-winning. It won bronze in Korea in the Global Coffee Championship. So, masarap coffee niya. Please reach out to Noemi, buy her coffee. I think it's one of the most delicious coffees, and I'm not being biased. I think it has potential, and it is worth the price that it's set at. But yeah, Noemi, please.
Great. Okay. Now, in Benguet, at least in our part of the map, in the morning it is sunny. In the afternoon it rains. So natural drying doesn't work for us. It has molds. It will get molds. Of course, there's probably a technology that will help address that. But with the processing methods that I learned from Harris, like wash, anaerobic process, dry ferment, we were able to process the coffee without any molds. So I think it's important that farmers know how to process their coffee. Of course, natural is one of the most sustainable process. But if you have the water, we have spring water, so we're able to do wash process. I think it will work. And I'm just hoping that a lot of these farmers, there are a lot of farms. I just discovered there are a lot of coffee trees in our community that have been neglected because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to make it taste even more delicious and how to process it properly. So I think that's what we need. And I've been discussing this with Aris that we need more people like you to share this expertise. And I'm sharing it in my community. That's why we formed a coffee association of coffee farmers.
Okay. All right. I think we can open the floor to questions now. As I mentioned earlier, we want to. I think we'll upload this entire session online because again, if I only upload the first hour, I don't think we'll be able to really get into the meat of the discussion, which is important. So I think maybe what I can do is, before we open the floor to questions, sort of putting everything that we've discussed so far. One is that we're maybe our pride in the Philippines is a little misplaced when it comes to coffee production. There's a lot of potential there and a lot of opportunities for other entrepreneurs like Michael and like Noemi to look at the coffee industry of the Philippines and see what kind of potential is there. A lot of the things that were discussed talk about foundational issues. So you talked about, what kind of variety to grow in the area, that even though we are lucky enough to have a good growing conditions for coffee, like actually bringing that technology there or sort of bridging that knowledge gap, I think, about producing premium high quality coffee, I think that's still missing. That's something that we've identified through your answer. So as you mentioned, selecting the variety, understanding your soil and what are the needs of the coffee, understanding the fact that the economics of it is a little difficult. You've said it twice, I'll say it a third time, you're not going to be a billionaire with coffee, but it is a good livelihood, I think, is the thing that's important to note here. Because even if you're not a billionaire, if you are a coffee farmer with a small farm, but you're getting good margins on your coffee anyway, I think that's really the main thing to focus on here. And then that a big gap that still needs to be addressed is actually processing the coffee in such a way that we're able to produce a premium coffee that has the flavors, has the taste that a connoisseur would really be willing to pay for. You already mentioned issues about how fruitiness as an idea or as a flavor was not well appreciated at the start, and part of that is rooted in how the coffee was not really processed well enough. If it's a bad if it's already bad at the very beginning, it's going to be bad no matter what you do with it. And I think maybe that's still something that needs to be addressed. So I think for the purposes of like trying to understand, if we're thinking about the possibility of adopting communities, if you're an entrepreneur that's interested in, developing communities and bridging that gap, these are, I think, some of those challenges that we need to look into. And I think that's a good way to sort of look at the main points of what we've discussed so far. So I'll open the floor now to questions. What I'll do is I'll ask people to please introduce yourself before you ask your question. You give us your name, give us where you're from, give us a little bit about yourself or what you do, and then you can proceed to your question. As Ernie mentioned, let's try to limit ourselves to one question as much as we can so that we can give as many opportunities as possible to as many people asking as we can. So I see Ernie already has his hand raised. Ernie, would you like to come in?
Yes. First of all, I like this idea of loading the 2 hours, but we'll talk about whether that can be shortened a bit to 1.5 hours, because we can edit out some stuff because our people have short attention spans because of their business. So maybe mine should be edited out. But here's my question. My question is based on a premise. The premise being that we did wonderful work and we're fed up with the way agriculture is run in this country. It's too much subsidy, ayuda. We have 200 billion. Vietnam had 6% of their budget. Ours is 2%, now it's 3%. You can keep your ayuda, but everything they're going to add for next year is billions. You get part of that and put it into what you have. And while we appreciate communities, we got to be like Vietnam. It's got to be strategic. And just for comparison, when we came in Board of Investments, I came in, and I just copied Thailand. We went from 3 billion to 400 billion. And in retirement, I said copy Thailand. We had from, that's private sector, first one's government. We went from 100 to more than double. And Vietnam is not doing it by each goody person doing a little bit of association. It's a strategic thing. And for the first time with a businessman, he's going to do that. And I'm glad you don't like the coffee roadmap, because I don't like the roadmaps. I'm also in charge of the industry roadmaps. My one in cement is 10 million pesos. Some agribusinesses are 200,000 pesos. We've got to revamp this whole thing. So my question really is this, Michael. I think our foundation wants to spread technology. and we can do it bit by bit, which you're doing. And perhaps through this little forum, some will do that. But we're in a hurry, and therefore part of our spreading is going to the powers. And right now the climate is right because we have businessmen for the first time. So are you willing to spend time on this? Because, for example, they're planting cacao. They're telling people to lose money because the break-even is 2.0, average 0.06. They're trying to plant and they're all losing money. Ridiculous, right? It's really ridiculous. And just to highlight this, and like I said, maybe you can cut this out of the short thing. When I asked how they'd spend the money, okay, 40% is on Kadiwa, 20% is on youth, and 0.7% is on formation. It's totally ridiculous. That's not how Vietnam won. So we're in a mood of transformation, and we need people like you with experience, not academic, and young with the vigor and creativity. So are you willing to spend time with decision makers, not little analysts, but decision makers, to be a strategic contributor, a very big contributor? Because when I saw the agri roadmaps, they're done by academics, etc. And the private sector names there did not even agree that they followed it. Whereas in DTI, they paid for it, they signed it and all that. So I've been asked to do this only about 4 months ago. And coffee, is really important, right? And you're a winner, right? So are you willing to go into this, in depth? Not quantity, but quality time will get you for the important meetings. Are you, I know you're very busy, but can you spend time, because you're doing fantastic work. It's got to be spread faster. We have 200 billion, for God's sake. A lot of it spent on subsidy. Vietnam didn't win on subsidy. They won on technology transfer and management. Are you going to do that, Michael?
Yes, actually, I have been invited, and I still keep being invited in the cacao and coffee. I think that's the one you're talking about, the cacao and
Yeah,
coffee.
but that stuff is not. Secretary Laurel a month ago said the following, right? We gotta have a transformation. The way that's done is not the way we should do it. We should do it really the right way. So I'm gonna invite you to special meetings. First of all, I'm a chairman of one of those committees, international trade, but we're doing something different because that form is sort of NGO, human rights, micro. We gotta go beyond that. We'll never get there.
I was just about to say, I
another
stopped
kind of
attending. I stopped
Pardon?
attending because it was going nowhere.
I know. Yeah, I know.
So
But no,
definitely,
this will be under me, right?
yes,
Yeah.
definitely, I would love to help. It would be very meaningful to me. I would like to share everything I know. I just came back from Colombia, and it was a learning trip. I had a good mentor there, and they are at the forefront of coffee. And I think if we follow their footsteps, we can leapfrog
Right.
places like Vietnam, places like Indonesia. Uh, I think, but it's better we focus on specialty coffee rather than quantity. We focus on quality. Better
Okay.
coffee.
I don't want to take too much time, but thank you very much for willingness. We'll follow this up. And we need people like you. We don't need academics who don't know reality doing our roadmaps. You know what I mean? We need people like you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Salamat po.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much for that, Ernie. We have a question in the chat box from Yvette. Yvette, would you be okay with coming online to ask this question that you have about the children of coffee farmers?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I made it. Yes. So my
Good.
question, I loved your talk. It's very inspirational, but also we have a long way to go. So my question is, have the children of the coffee farmers you work with changed their minds about farming, given how their parents are doing now?
So we have scholars. We have two that already graduated in agronomy. One in agronomy, one in agriculture. So those two are actually now involved one's in DTI, helping. The other one is helping in the community in Itogon. Siya yung nag-handle ng Every harvest season, he's the one doing the the hu- the planning and all that stuff. So in terms of youth, the youth are starting to go into coffee, but we have to make farming cooler. It's still far from the the kids that are coming in and applying to be baristas, you know. Nobody's coming in to apply to be a farmer. So I think there's still work to be done. We still have to make it cool. We have to prove to them still that um it is a good means of living. It is it's a noble job. Kasi ngayon, the people who are approaching me about farming are people who similar to Noemi, who are about to retire, or thinking about retiring, and just want to relax. The thing is, coffee, though it is relaxing when all goes well, um, when it's not going well, if there's a bagyo, it's not relaxing. It's a lot of work. So we still have to convince the youth that it's worth it. And I think showing them that um it is a noble job. It is the hard work is not just hard work, but it's fulfilling work. That's how we can get them more on board. Yeah, so far, the sons and daughters of farmers they're becoming baristas in Baguio, for example, right? Because harvest season is just 3-4 months a year. So most of them work as baristas. Some of them work as they have other jobs, and they come home for harvest season. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Yvette.
It does. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks so much. We not so much a question, but really something that wants to be pointed out. Melchor Virata. Uh, Melchor, do you want to talk about the things that you shared just now? Melchor?
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
I just learned that Philippines, fourth largest importer of coffee.
I don't know the figures now, but I know Philippines imports a lot of its coffee. Majority of the coffee that we consume here in the Philippines are imported po.
From Vietnam.
That's the closest country, and they have one of the cheapest prices in the world.
We're making Vietnam very rich. We import a lot of rice and then coffee.
Opo. Opo.
Eh,
Unfortunately, they are the cheapest and they are the most efficient at these things. But
Yeah.
I hope if we do things right, kahit hindi natin habulin yung quantity nila, but yung quality, at mahabol natin yung presyo na tama, I hope we can do it that way.
Yes.
Yeah, if I can add to that conversation a little bit, Vietnam currently they export a huge amount of coffee, and we import a lot of mostly Robusta, because of instant coffee. So just as a bit of a plug, Harvest is actually working with Nestle. We're actually trying to increase coffee yields locally that local farmers can work with. Because right now the average coffee production per tree in the Philippines is something between 200 and 300 grams of beans. So that's actually the green beans already from per coffee tree here in the Philippines. Whereas Vietnam is averaging about 2,000 grams. So it's quite a lot, but perhaps not to simply be all doom and gloom about the whole situation. Vietnam's very aggressive policies in increasing yield is starting to catch up to them after maybe 3 or 4 decades of it. Basically, the reason why coffee in Vietnam they're able to produce so much of it um, per tree is because Vietnam actually really pushes a lot of fertilization. So fertilizers are very cheap in Vietnam. So farmers actually use I think 4 times the amount of fertilizer, the amount of synthetic fertilizers as Filipino farmers do, or even comparing to farmers from Indonesia, which is also a very, very huge Robusta coffee producer in the world. That practice is catching up with Vietnam now. It's the same problem that we're experiencing with sugarcane in the Philippines, where there's so much fertilization that's happening in the soil that the ability of the soil to support the nutrition needed by the trees and the availability of that nutrition for the trees, it's starting to become a problem. So actually, coffee production in Vietnam has been falling. The cost of production has been going up, which represents potential opportunities for the Philippines, but in a hopefully more sustainable and environmentally friendly way, because we don't want to simply be like, oh, Vietnam is starting to fall off a little bit, and then we try to do the same thing they did, and then we just end up killing our own coffee industry how many decades into the future. You know, we don't
Julius,
want that.
during the 60s, we observed that in Cavite, they used to have uplands and lowlands. The uplands are close of the Silang and Gaytay. The lowlands are near the coast. We observed that people in the lowland are very, very rich in terms of more business opportunities. But because of coffee, high demand for coffee, a lot of them planted coffee during the 70s, 80s in Silang. Now, because of real estate development, I'm not sure whether there's still a coffee industry in Silang, Cavite. No? Because of the real estate, high price of real estate in Silang. So that's one way of killing the coffee industry in Silang, Cavite.
Yeah,
That's my
that is an unfortunate reality.
observation.
Yeah, places that are good to plant crops in usually also are good places to build houses on. So there's that. Okay, thanks very much for that, Melkor. I see Robert also has a question.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
some have been answered already. I just came from Indonesia. Amazed ako. Talagang, they're number one, planting a lot. Number two, they have a good leader, governance ng country nila. Of course, number three, para bang na-feel ko, of course, talagang active participation with people should be like Michael, mga businessmen. Kasi, walang magawa yung mga farmer. Hand to mouth lang sila eh. Talagang kailangan may mag-initiate. And then pagka kung na yung tumatakbo na, okay, like Indonesia, then the farmers are learning a little by little on the, let's say, reverse engineering or reverse planting. Parang ganon, no? Really, in other words, I think the businessman will have to play an important role. Okay, and the question I heard before, we import like $1 billion worth of coffee like milk. So it's a shame, no? That's draining our dollars, no, to the Philippines, no. Okay, my question now, ang natitira kasi I have a few more questions that I wanted to find out. Well, there's a group of people from Israel who came to me and says, I wanna invest. So I'm addressing this to Michael. Do you want to put up a chain of coffee shop? Okay, and then integrating my pets or my animals. So it's gonna be like a pet coffee shop. And then they'd like to put, not only in the Philippines, all around Asia, and then Europe. Okay, starting with a couple here in the Philippines, no, or in Metro Manila. So will that work? Na they want to get really a good brand, good taste of Philippine coffee, which I suggested Arabica, no, and then blended properly. Okay. And however, of course, another issue yung baka may animal issue, yung mga pet love, mga kwan, anong tawag dito, animal rights, etc., etc. That's another issue that I'm trying to check out now. But on the coffee side, Michael, what do you think of that concept na they want really a good Filipino coffee, talagang masarap, no? Tapos nun, and then may pets all around the area. What do you think?
like a pet shop coffee, parang ganon. Like
Something like that. But para bang actually it's not really a pet shop only, but it's more of may hasdon, may reptile, may a little rabbit na unique na maganda. Well, children can go there with their parents and then enjoy viewing the different pets and animals. Yeah.
I think some
Yeah.
context is needed here for Michael. Michael, just so you know, Robert is the owns Zumanity Group. So he has some of the biggest, these kinds of
We have
the
six
zoos
parts.
and yeah, six parks. So I'm this is
Thank you.
sort of, I think, dovetailing into this.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
so that there's a little
Yes, yes.
context
Oh,
for
that
Michael
is
to
for
work
that
with.
reason that they approach me. That's for that reason that they approach me. So can they'll be the capitalist. Tapos nun, they want my expertise in the animals, and then they want somebody expert naman in coffee.
um, I think the concept can work as long as we have a clear idea in mind. In terms of the coffee, Philippines, we have four different kinds of species of coffee here in the Philippines. We have
Mm.
Arabica, Robusta, Liberica, and Celsa,
Mm.
which they say is also Liberica. But I think we we are lucky enough that our coffee is diverse. We don't need to rely on Arabica alone. Arabica is nice,
Yeah.
and like was mentioned a while ago, Robusta. Um, a lot of our production here in the Philippines, especially in Silang Cavite, in Mindanao, is Robusta. Um, the only thing is kulang eh. Kulang yung processing. Pwedeng sumarap ang Robusta. There is a way. It comes down to fermentation and using the proper yeast, the proper process.
Mm.
And Liberica. Liberica is such an amazing, and
Yeah.
we didn't touch on it. Liberica is an amazing coffee. We
Angus
also call
coffee.
it Barako.
Barako,
Uh,
yeah.
and this coffee has the lowest caffeine out of all three species.
Ah,
And then in terms of flavor, it's innately flavorful.
yeah.
The only reason why it doesn't taste good is it's dried improperly. That's why it's
Mm.
lasang mapanghi, no?
Lupa.
Medyo, lasang lupa. It's because it's dried improperly. It should just be dried properly.
But do
So,
we have enough plants, Iberica?
um, at the moment, no.
Yun.
But thing with Liberica is it grows in the lowlands. It's
Yeah.
climate resistant. It's resistant to coffee rust. So this is actually I believe the future of coffee. Kasi because of climate change, the space where you can plant Arabic coffees is pakunti ng pakunti.
Correct.
Brazil is losing their plantation and shifting to Robusta. Tayo, one, marami na tayo Robusta, and two, may Liberica tayo. Uh,
Oh,
so I think this is something that we can discuss some other time. In
yeah.
terms of your question naman, I think the concept is good. As long as the investors understand that, again, you're not gonna become a billionaire from the coffee. Um, in my point of view naman, if they're selling the coffee at the proper price and the pull or the hatak of the place naman has enough volume of tao. Yeah, a coffee shop kasi should be able to sell to survive on coffee alone. A coffee shop should be able to sell at least 500 to 1,000 cups a day of coffee alone. That's why kami hinahaluan we sell food, 'di ba? Kasi ang per transaction price ng pagkain isang table. Let's see, dalawa tayong kumain, mga 2,000 yon, di ba? Kailan pa mag-coffee ka, kahit napakamahal ng coffee mo,
Mm. Yeah.
ah,
Yeah.
maximum
Okay.
280, 250 yon, kulang. So, I think your concept, I would be happy to consult and
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
if they need. But
Can
your
you
concept, we can fine tune and we can work
Yeah,
on it.
yeah. Oh, there's one more thing, no? Yung isang staff ko naman, a couple of 2 years ago before the pandemic, gusto naman niya unlimited
Ay, wag.
coffee, lulugi, di ba? Para bang may unlimited lunch, unlimited dinner, and kasi we operate also samgyup sa lahat, no? Unlimited coffee. Kaya lang, of course, membership. you pay membership, let's say weekly, monthly, and yearly. Not cheap, no, but it's good. But yung unlimited, hindi siya brewed. Yung nasa, ano to?
Espresso.
Ba yan? No, parang sa hotel. Yung malaking stainless na garapon para mag-brew yun.
Percolator.
Oo, nasa percolator, no? However, kung gusto mong brewed, iba presyo yun. Parang gano'n. So, that's because pupunta ka doon sa coffee shop, doon ka na lang magmi-meeting dahil pandemic, inom ka ng inom ng kape. Of course, ayaw mo namang uminom ng anim na kape, manginginig ka na ng ganyan. So, it's more of psychological daw, sabi ng team members ko. I don't know. Think about it, and then let's discuss. But I have some group of friends. I'll probably invite these friends, investor, to invest in that cafe barako. Maganda yon. Yes.
Opo.
Yeah.
Magandang
Alright,
idea.
sige.
Yes.
Sige,
Thank you,
thanks very
Michael.
much for
No?
that, Robert.
Can
Yeah.
you text your how I can reach you, or you can dictate it?
We'll give you
Yeah.
we'll send you, give me a sec. We'll
yeah.
copy those contact details again.
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Ernie, yeah.
No, I just want to say that Robert is brilliant, but we should give others a chance to talk.
Okay. Other questions from the audience. Perhaps there are other people who'd like to ask questions. There was a question from Rosario Buendia, but that was answered already. She's asking about Noemi's coffee brand. So Noemi already responded in the chat box. It's Agnep Coffee Farm. It's Benguet Arabica.coffee is their website. It's there in the chat box right now. If in case you want to buy what Michael did say is her award-winning coffee beans. Are there other questions from the audience? I do have a question that I'd like to ask. If there's nobody who'd like to ask anything. Okay. Sure. So, well, obviously the conversation has gone around, trying to figure out, creating that trust with the community, creating that profitability for the farmer, allowing him to cover their cost and things like that. But let's also talk about the market, because obviously the reason why this works is because there is a market of dedicated people who are chasing that sort of perfect flavor of coffee for them. Admittedly, I myself, I'm fairly new to coffee. I only really started drinking coffee about 2 years ago. And that was primarily to manage a disease that I have with my blood. So anyway, let's not get into that. But so before that, I was actually mostly a tea drinker. And I think because since that time, it's been very interesting to sort of understand that it's not that different from tea. You have a plant that can be grown in many different places, and then the fact, being grown in different places, having different types of soil, having different weather conditions, having different handling processes, different processing techniques, all change the flavor, which from what would be essentially the same plant, although you have different varieties of it, as you've mentioned. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that side of things, that market of people, that reputation, let's say, for example, of Philippine premiums beans, especially that you've mentioned, you've exported some, or you have it yourself here in the Philippines. And this general reaction to how the rise of Philippine coffee, the how that market has reacted to it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience in the World Barista Championships, and how that sort of started opening the minds of people to, hey, wait, Philippine coffee, something we hadn't seen before, something that we haven't sort of put our minds to before. Maybe you can talk about that, because that also gives us this idea of that possibility of creating more premium coffee beans from the Philippines to that audience that is very particular about their coffee.
So coffee people, specialty coffee people, coffee fanatics, coffee lovers, they're always looking for something different. And coffee can be many things. You can make through the soil or the varietal or the processing. You can actually modulate the flavors you can bring out of it through those variables. So currently, the specialty coffee community in the world, what they pay price or higher prices for coffees that are either floral in aroma and flavor, or with distinct flavors. So for example, if your coffee is smells like, for example, jasmine, tapos the flavors are like Earl Grey and apricots and stone fruits. I just described Noemi's coffee, by the way. um,
Okay.
uh, People would pay for that. People would pay for that rather than a coffee that is nutty, is woody. So people would pay more for distinct flavors, for yung quality ba, like something that reflects the precision and hard work and all the investment in that coffee, than something mediocre that tastes like wood, or bitter water. Because bitter water naman, there's nothing special about it. You can make bitter water out of anything. Diba? You can take a piece of wood and brew it, and it's gonna taste like woody water, right? But if coffee can taste like bergamot, which is like a fancy thing, diba? Yeah, Earl Grey. Um, I think that's something really special. That's something that's extraordinary na eh. Um, so yeah, I think that's how we can that's what people are looking for, and the best way to do that uh is through learning more technologies from other countries. So I recently came back from Colombia, and in Colombia they are the most advanced in everything, in soil, in processing. My mentor there, Wilton Benitez, he is the leading mind in fermentation. So he grows his own yeast. He grows the yeast from the the coffee itself. So it's the yeast that's around, and then he isolates it, and he chooses the right yeast for the right varietal of coffee. And through his techniques, he's able to bring out very distinct flavors of raspberry. He can bring out lychee. He can bring out passion fruit that you don't even need to give it a second thought. If you taste the coffee, you will say lychee. Hindi yung parang you taste it and you go, I think it's lychee. No, this guy, it's like, and sometimes duda ka rin eh. You would think, did he put lychee in the fermentation tank? And if you do the math, this is how I know he does not. One, I was there and I watched him make it. And two, if he did put lychee, his selling price would be maybe 5 to 10 times higher. So ang selling price niya for his coffees is about the same price as our costs here with that Itogon coffee, mga 1,300 is his selling price. So ibig sabihin, sa selling price niya, may tubo na siya. Right? Sa yung cost ko, wala pa akong tubo, siya may tubo na. And yung tubo niya medyo malaki. And that's landed, ah. That's him exporting it to me. I've paid my 40% tax on top of that, and it's about the same price. So I think that's something we need to work on. It's something we need to work on, because that's the expectation. At that price point, at our cost for our green coffee beans, our raw beans, people expect it to taste amazing, right? And if the taste does not match the price, we won't be able to command a profitable price for our coffee. Puro price na lang sinabi ko, eh, no? But
Yun naman ang importante eh.
oh, okay. But yeah, that's one. And then I think another thing we didn't touch on that skipped my mind is fully utilizing the coffee tree. This is one of the projects we did in Santa Maria, Laguna. And you mentioned something about tea, right? We in Santa Maria, we were able to teach the community there to clean the coffee leaves. Because coffee trees are green all year round. It will not run out of leaves. And we encourage the coffee farmers to prune their trees and rejuvenate it. So when you prune the trees, you can make the leaves, you can process it to become tea, and it tastes amazing. It tastes like oolong. Um, so utilizing the rest of the tree is a good idea. Even their wood, the wood of the stem, we're able to transform that into liquid smoke uh, by collecting by burning it and collecting the aroma. We turn it into a syrup, and it tastes like barbecue sauce. So this is used in cocktail bars, in mixology, to give that nice peaty whiskey aroma to their beverages. Another thing we use is the balat of the coffee. We dry that and we sell it as cascara, and that's sold as a tea. So I think another thing that needs to be done or needs to be taught to coffee farmers is fully utilizing the tree, and turning something that has no value into something with value. And I think we need more people promoting this stuff, promoting the end product. Kasi kung may interest, then the farmers can do it. To them, it doesn't cost much to the farmers. It's not as much work as taking care of the coffee cherry and processing it, because the leaves are easier to harvest and they can harvest it all year round. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Really this whole thing. I remember when I visited the Robusta farmers in Bukidnon, and they told me that they actually eat the leaves of the coffee tree. Like they mix it into their soups and into their dishes, and apparently they get their caffeine from that as well. So definitely, yeah, a lot of opportunities that are still very, very untapped. But I think underpinning everything is still this theme that you've been bringing up again and again, that you have to develop that trust, that the community has to trust you to bring that up. I think that's also a thing that I've seen when visiting coffee farmers, that they were told that coffee would be a good crop for them to grow. They were given the seedlings, or and then they planted it on their land, and then that's it. It wasn't really something that blossomed into a sustainable livelihood for them. We actually had another speaker a couple of sessions ago have the same issue with cacao, where they're working with the cacao farmers that had been abandoned, like cacao farms that had been abandoned in Zamboanga, Sibugay, Phil Seed Foundation. So I think that's a reoccurring theme, where perhaps there's a lot of excitement about a crop gaining traction, I think, internationally, and then people scrambling to jump on that bandwagon without really sort of building that full understanding of how the market works, or understanding what those challenges are. So I think we've touched on a lot of those topics already, especially in your case. I think the primary gap that you think that you see needs to be addressed in creating that flavor is really how you process those beans so that you have a product that works really, really well. So that's really interesting, because a lot of people that I talk to, Liberica has a special place in my heart. And I love the smokiness of it. I like to combine it with other things, because by itself it's a little much, but I usually like to combine it with other coffees that I have. So I think that's something that I think maybe a lot of people miss when it comes to coffee production, and I think that's a really important gap that I'm thankful you were able to bring up. during our conversation. Okay, we're almost out of time. So I think what we'll do. Oh, I see Ernie's unmuted. Ernie, yeah.
Yeah, if you're gonna close, I'll give my 4 minute speech. No one,
Go ahead.
no one else?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? Okay. Cacao, gold medalist, right? 1/1%. And they have like 15 technologies, right? All crazy. Okay, what we did is we got the gold medalist consultant, got him $1,000 a day, we got it for $100 a day. You'll be that kind of person. And now we got 16 universities all over the country to learn one. So that instead of giving 16 technologies one, and then it's spread systematically. That's what I mean by strategic and moving. But you can't do that on your own. You got to do that. Our foundation is connected, right? I was actively involved in that. And therefore, what I want you to do, instead of giving it to a few people, it'll go throughout the country, right? With the top people in 16 SUCs coming together. In other words, what I did with 18 technologies, it became one book with 16 universities. Then I got all the TESTA money. Yeah, what I'm saying is that there's a lot of money being wasted with ayuda. I'm kind of tired of that, right? This itsy bitsy stuff, which will never get anywhere. I mean, you get a few people, fine, right? But our country is in need of strategic moves like Vietnam, you know? And what we did in Cacao is really mind-boggling. I'll just call you up. And that's what I mean. You're the first one I saw, right? Who has this thing, you know, bronze medalist from Noemi, blah, blah, blah. You got it. And for you to give it to some, that's fine, a little foundation. I want to give it massive. I'll tell you, and therefore, I want you to really go into big time, right? I mean, all this money is our tax money going to all these subsidies. They can continue, but we can get the extra. They're going to give an extra 2 billion. And do it strategically, man. I'm fed up. I mean, actually, I'm an industry guy, right? I headed cement in 6 countries, right? But agriculture is, for me, the thing to do. And therefore, my life last couple of years has been agriculture. And the problem in agriculture is that they have this itsy bitsy social work, stuff. Presidents are doing fantastic thing like you're doing. It's not spread. We're gonna get it the way we did it with Cacao. We got the gold medalists, we got the consultants, and through charm, we got them cheap, blah blah blah. And I saw it happen in my own eyes, right? And if we did it for Cacao, we can do it for coffee. And coffee for me, it is something, I mean. Anyway, so that's it. So that's my 2 minutes. I'll call you, but I think you've got something gold there, and we will replicate what we did in Cacao, right? This happened only, a year ago, right? Okay, but I saw it happen, right? Imagine instead of you doing bit by bit, you'll do it with 17 universities, getting test the millions, doing that instead of this little itsy bitsy stuff. We're fed up. We gotta be a strategic country, right? Okay. Well, that's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ernie. Again, for context, Michael, usually what we do, again, what we want to do is to try and make these opportunities real, these thoughts, these ideas real. Sometimes, a person wants to look into the possibility of setting this up as an agribusiness or an agricultural enterprise, and there's not a lot of information, unfortunately, within the Philippine context for a lot of these things. And we feel that if there are people that we can sort of springboard a little bit to doing the same things in other areas, or people have already springboarded but they're struggling, these are things that we do. And so we want to share those experiences. We want all of this to be available to everyone freely, so that people can also apply that information, build up that knowledge base with these things. And then, of course, on the other side of things, if you were looking at the coffee roadmap, I worked with the vegetables industry for the vegetable roadmap. So, there's a lot of this kind of discussion back and forth. You mentioned, this is not possible entirely on your own effort. You need support from other organizations as well, from the government. These are things that need to be springboarded. And then sometimes if that conversation isn't there, if people don't talk to each other about what's actually happening, we end up in a situation like I mentioned, where the government invests in millions and millions of coffee seedlings, gives them out to as many people as possible, and that's it. Well-intentioned, not really great for actually developing an industry, things like that. So in any case, we need to close. So first of all, I'd like to give a certificate of appreciation. Let's flash that on screen. Can we put that online? Yeah. So the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation, in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines, together with all of our members, our individual members, corporate members, special partner institutions, and senior special partner institutions, all present this certificate of appreciation to Michael Harris Conlin for his invaluable support in the advocacy and promotion of agribusiness and countryside development, and for his commendable and unselfish services rendered to this foundation as our resource speaker on our 24th online meeting of 2024, given this 29th day of October in Pasig City, Philippines. Signed, Ernie Ordonez as our chairman and myself as our